All right, welcome to Lava. Good evening. My name is Darren Ng. I'm the executive director for Lava. I hope you enjoyed the Hamilton version or the Hamilton-esque rap that's been done on the appointment of Janet Yellen. I love that Steve Mnuchin is now referred to as the Lego guy. I think that's pretty funny. So before we start, just a quick primer. If this is your first time coming to Lava, we're here to support the community, this giant mesh network that is the Lava Los Angeles venture ecosystem, helping to facilitate communication, collaboration, and deal flow throughout the entire ecosystem. Just for those of you who are out there that are potential sponsors, the Global Lava is in search of a sponsor. So this committee has done a fantastic job, and Michael McClune and Sharon Rebinder have done an amazing job leading this committee in quite a year of 2020, and then really we're off to a great start in 2021. We have back-to-back events, not only today's, but tomorrow morning. There's a combined Global Lava and Lava Gov event on nodal opportunities in venture and investment in Africa, celebrating the World Day or African Diaspora Day. And so that's pretty exciting. Next week, for those of you who are investors and investors only, if you'd like an invitation and you invest in the gaming industry, please reach out to me and let me know. We have a syndication event highlighting 2 startups in gaming, Champions Round and Super Social. So that will be kind of an interesting event. We have a whole slate of events in February. I won't bore you right now to hear all of what they are, but certainly come back to lava.org. If you haven't watched the awards, please do. Without further ado, I will bring up Sharon Rebinder and Michael McClune just to say thank you to them for putting this panel together of fantastic folks. And I don't see them on yet, but I think they'll be coming up shortly. There they are.
Hi.
Hello, guys. Welcome.
Thanks, Darren.
And Steven's joined. There we go. Steven's up too. So I'll turn it over to you, Michael.
Sure. Well, I'd like to introduce Sharon. And if you want to do good business, you should go to France, and she's the one who you should talk to, because there's this particular region in France where you really need to go. I would call it the Stanford, MIT equivalent of, right?
Grenoble, yes, in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. Thanks, Michael. Take it away.
Okay. So that was Sharon and Michael. We're the co-chairs of Global Lava. As Darren said, we're proud to be the leaders of these new communities that keep growing, not only in influence, but in numbers. We have a few different new communities like CPG, and as you mentioned, government, public sector community. So check out what they're doing. We like to be the leader in this because we're all about startups. We want to move quickly. We've done a lot of interesting panel events, very casual conversational style. We'll put the links in there. In the past year, we did the EU and UK, we did Africa, we did Latin America, we did a specific country, which was India, we did Middle East, North Africa, and we have a very diverse group of experts that represents academia and the public sector and investment, VCs and funders, and startup owners themselves. So you'll see that again tonight. And the new thing that we're doing in 2021, as this is the looking forward prognostication event for the rest of the year, is that we're going to move into what Darren mentioned was the deal flow and the founder meets funder. So Global Lava, in addition to bringing content and experts to introduce to the LA community and greater US community to help global growth, we're also going to be bringing in foreign companies and matching them with US investors or vice versa. So our first event will be with South Korean startups in early March. And then looks like we're going to go to Central America after that. A lot of really interesting, scrappy fintech startups down there that they're not cheap, but they're inexpensive for investors. So we'll keep you abreast of that. So as you'll hear from Stephen and Taj and Christine, LA is definitely the place to be if you're going global. Everybody wants to come here. Everybody wants to buy from here. Everybody wants to a piece of our lifestyle. So they'll give their expert perspectives and their views. You know, as I mentioned earlier, will come from a lot of different angles, academia, public sector, and they work with both multinationals and conglomerates all the way down to scrappy startups. And I know that because I've worked with all of them individually as an honor that it's been. So we've a variety of expert perspectives. So if I do this right, you'll walk away with smarter. In 2021, you'll have one step ahead of the competition. You're going to hear some hiding in plain sight gems of really where to accelerate not only your business, but your revenues. And what else? You walk away, you'll go home with the tips and the tricks and the tools and the resources that will help you go global. So I'll start with Christine. And typically, I don't, as a moderator, I never want people to talk about themselves and burn up all that time. But I think it's critical that the attendees for today's event get to know these three folks, understand what they do, and most importantly, how they're going to help you and your business triple and quadruple and scale in your global growth strategy. So, and I should say the most important part if you're a startup founder is that all of these services are pretty much free or extremely low cost. So I think, Christine, I met you, what was it, your first day here or first week? Mayor Garcetti was smart enough to hire her away from President Obama. She was in the executive office of the White House, right? So he was looking to you for intellectual property.
I have to admit that I also worked under the Trump administration. So I spanned both actually in the office of the U.S. Trade Representative doing
those are the different perspectives
IP
I'm talking
negotiations.
about.
Yeah.
And so anecdotally, Christine helped, what was it, an Australian client of ours really get a foothold in the city of Los Angeles as a pilot program, also as a lender. Interestingly enough, I don't think a lot of people know that the city itself is a lender for those who may not qualify or want to get traditional loans. And she knows anybody in any country, because they're all here in LA, as I said, to get startup founder their feet or dip their toes into any foreign market, right? So, and I'm doing this introduction because all these three are chock full of humility. So I want to make sure I get the superlatives of how great these guys are. So can you introduce yourself, Christine?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think you just did a great job of it, probably better than I'm going to do, but it's a pleasure to meet everyone here virtually. And please feel free, as Michael said, to consider me a resource after this ends today. And I'm in the office of Mayor Eric Garcetti in his Office of International Affairs, and what my mission is and how I'd like to support you all is by either taking your products and services and finding international markets and buyers for them, and also bringing international companies to Los Angeles to start up offices and be partners, clients, and collaborators with you all. So that's what I'm here to do.
Excellent. So you earn money for LA startups, you help them with the revenue, and then you're good at making partnerships for foreign companies coming here to partner with our most innovative companies, right? Awesome. Stephen, let's introduce you. Stephen is I think the absolute VIP of international trade in LA and greater Southern California. Let's see, anecdotally, I think the last time we met face to face, we were talking about what kind of fintech companies in LA could qualify for a great program that you have, which is putting together delegations to go international to represent not only LA, but the state of California. And those trips, delegations are highly subsidized, right? So you save them money and you get them, well, it was the Hong Kong Financial Forum, right? Which is Asia, if not the world's largest, right? So Steve is the kind of guy that can introduce you to, hundreds of countries at a time, with the backing and the cachet of Los Angeles. So, Stephen, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I actually duplicate some of the services that Christine in her office does as well, but we work in partnership with each other quite a lot. But for the international audience, I think the thing to note is that LA is a big, big place, and that's why just Christina and I, even if there are 50 of us, it still won't be enough because LA is just such a big, big market. Christine was mentioning that she works for the city of Los Angeles, which is the second largest city in the United States with over 4 million people. But LA, there are actually 88 different cities and over 100 incorporated regions, making up about 10.2 million people here. So that's why in order to access these resources and understand how to do business here and help all the clients that are here go international, there needs to be more and more of us to be able to do kind of the work that we do. And that's why we work in partnership with each other. We at the World Trade Center LA and the LA Economic Development Corporation, what our focus is trying to basically create opportunities for ecosystems to grow, whether it's clean technology, whether it's aerospace and defense, whether it's bioscience, whether it's ocean economy. We want to make sure that these industries are growing here by helping international companies find out how to do business here and go through some of the challenges, because again, to find the right resources and understand how to do business here, it's not always the easiest thing to do because there's just so much information. So our job is to provide that information to make it easier. And for local companies that are going international, we also have a lot of great contacts internationally as well. And sometimes we're offered these great partnership like subsidized trade shows, travel arrangements so that they can access the international market very easily without having to spend a lot of money to test that. So our job is to vet all the information and provide them with a more streamlined approach so that they can get to business.
Excellent. I hope everyone's paying attention to that, because the tools and the resources you guys have at zero cost are just phenomenal. So if you go to Stephen's office, you realize that when presidents come to the Los Angeles area, presidents of other countries as well as U.S. presidents, they go to him and he gives them the lay of the land of the.
That doesn't happen all that often. So. So
I'm sticking with the presidential theme, and you've certainly given your counsel to them on trade, right? So with that, let's bring in Taj. Wow, it's difficult to introduce someone like Taj. Let's say he's a musician and a poet at heart. He is you're an economist by education, and then your PhD is in geopolitical economics, was it? Yeah. He's an investor. He ran the Accelerator for UC Riverside, right?
Riverside,
Yeah, so he has the acceleration. He's now one of LA's leading impact investors. He had some big news he released today. You can't say enough about Taj. You studied in Chile. Last time I guess we saw each other, it was a presentation from the Hong Kong Trade Development Council about how they want to work with LA companies to bring them over through Hong Kong to access the greater Asian continent. And I was having a sandwich with you afterwards. You're like, I actually went to school in Hong Kong, so I love this stuff. So.
I thank you, Michael. I am a lifelong student, so that explains why, studying over in Chile and Valparaiso and in Portugal and in Hong Kong, I love to see how different cultures react, because I truly believe in a world community. I'm the Senior Director for Investment over at the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator, which is based in downtown Los Angeles, and it's a public-private partnership between the City of Los Angeles, the County of Los Angeles, and private investors such as BMW, BYD, Wells Fargo, and many others. You would think, being in the space in an incubator where we work with startup companies, there's not a lot of focus on international trade or expand internationally. And I counter that, because I think that what has happened is that the world from a digital standpoint has grown smaller. And you have companies earlier and earlier thinking about expanding overseas when the time is right and if the markets are right. I experienced it personally. Some years ago, I was the COO of a clothing company. If you're a fan of basketball, you may have seen our clothing on some of your favorite players, such as LeBron James and a few others. But we got a partnership with a Chinese actor to launch in China. And we were in 8 stores in China, manufacturing in the United States, but exporting to China, which is so different when you think about the apparel industry and historically what has happened. But that made us a really great opportunity. And from that, we ended up being the agency of record for McDonald's to do their apparel, their clothing for that. So I think that experience for me taught me that if you're going to expand, it's all about relationships and building those relationships. And I think that was one of the things that really helped us as a small, young, scrappy company go from making clothes in downtown Los Angeles to selling in great stores in Shanghai, Beijing, and other places.
Actually, I want to go back to something Stephen said, in that this is such a large market and it's so lucrative and potentially lucrative for those who are looking to go global, that even if there were 50 of you and Christine's and Taj's, yeah, in focusing on international trade, it still wouldn't be enough, right? So as an example of how large this market is, Christine and Taj, even though they both work for the city, in theory, had never met each other until tonight. Right. So Christine, you're the director of international trade and investment. And Taj is the senior director of investment for the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator, also a project to the city, and they're just meeting now. So it's just an amazing, rich abundance of expertise that's out there for the founders. And that's who we're trying to serve and educate in these events. So what we're going to do tonight is talk about the strategies, the best strategies, the ones that have changed from last year, the ones that are new from this year, the ones that are evergreen and always smart, about how to go big, how to go big globally, and particularly now that we've seen the underbelly of our culture and our fabric and our commerce that was exposed during the pandemic and the economic downturn. So what we really want to do is look at some strategies for startups and the founders and founding teams. So with that, I'm going to start with Christine, because I know, and I always tell all of our clients when we first started working with them, is that 7 out of the 10 fastest growing markets in the world are in Africa. And Africa is a really young continent, and they're very technologically educated and advanced and comfortable, and they've leapfrogged with the technology of catching up, developing countries as they do. So their adoption of mobile use is phenomenal. So, and I know you had a great event today. So, and I know Taj, you have something to say about what she's going to say too. So, Christine, what do you think some of the best strategies are for startup founders?
Yeah, so I think, well, the world's a big place, and I don't think there's any one market. So I'll caveat this, but with that, whatever market is right for your products and services is your market. For us, we have to, and by us, I mean the city of Los Angeles, we have to direct and focus our resources. And this year we're focusing on Africa, on East Africa in particular, and on Kenya even more particularly. So the reason that we're doing that is because some of the relationships are not as developed between Los Angeles and East Africa. The mayor has never led a trade mission to Africa before. So what we're doing is a fact-finding trade mission that will be virtual in March. And we're focusing on areas that the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, another partner that I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with, have identified as being a growth area, and that's construction, design, housing. Kenya has a goal to build 500,000 homes over the next 5 years. And we think LA companies, especially sustainable LA construction and materials companies, are really well suited to meet that need. And then of course, along with this, Kenya is focusing on building cities, and cities that run well for their residents. And so we're also focusing on renewable energy, smart cities technologies, water resource management. And so that's an area that we're excited about. You know, Kenya is a great entry point into East Africa. It has been improving leaps and bounds in terms of ease of business. And now with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, there are much lower non-tariff trade barriers have been removed across the continent, making it easier to, you know, once you find success in one market, really expand throughout the continent. So that's what we're excited about exploring in March. And hopefully that'll lead to some really promising leads that will then result in an in-person trade mission once it's safe to do that.
Should I plug again that we have a Global Lava and a Lava Gov event tomorrow morning with in connection with the United Nations Calendar Day of Afro Descendants. Forgive me, I can't remember the actual calendar day, but basically connecting the diaspora, you know, commercially and culturally. Taj.
It's like we're colluding or something, but we're not.
Yeah, it's such a big market where we overlap everywhere. Oh, I should also say to the attendees, you can also go back and look at watch our African panel seminar. That was moderated by the woman who runs the Prosper Africa. She's a leader in the Prosper Africa movement, which is a federal initiative to put a lot of money behind U.S. companies looking to expand into Africa. So you can contact me if you want more information about that. Taj, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, you know,
1.2 billion people in Africa.
Yeah,
it's a potential.
You know, there's three things I want to kind of mention on Africa. I know we're going to have, I know Dylan and the crew are going to talk about it tomorrow, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing them speak on it. But you know, one of the things, I'm a son of an African immigrant myself, even though I was born here in the United States. There are a lot of people who are like me, who were born here, who are making and educated here, but are going back to the continent and taking the knowledge they had here and making some efforts and strides there. Give you a perfect example and how LA kind of plays into that. Like I mentioned, I'm at Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator, and we partner and have this event called LA Commotion that's focusing on transportation. And we get all these companies from all around the world to come in and participate here. There was a company from Nigeria called Max Okada that came here and totally crushed it. Techstars alum that was the founder, but the company's based in Nigeria and focusing on transportation in Nigeria as well. And leaning more towards sustainability there, having clean vehicles and transportation and focusing there, because it's a country that really relies on a lot of mopeds and two-wheel vehicles. And so we're seeing a lot of that, not just from a founder standpoint, but from a fund standpoint as well. One of the other things that I failed to mention, in addition to being at Lacey, is I'm in the process of joining a team that's creating a fund of funds to invest in other fund managers, both Black and brown fund managers, including fund managers that are investing domestically and internationally. And we're seeing a number of individuals who are investing in Africa, not just in fintech, which has been a really good place. And we could talk about, you know, the trade deficit on services and how we're not really tracking that, the service exportation for us from the United States. But also too, what we're seeing is this explosion in clean tech is really changing a lot of ways people think about it. You know, sometimes people would ask me, you know, all these emerging markets, are they really concerned about sustainability like we are here in the States? I think it's a different type of concern, because I think for me, when you think about sustainability, when you're thinking about clean tech, it's more about a public health issue and an economic issue with job creation than just a moralistic issue. And so when you start thinking about it from that standpoint, yes, I think a lot of those markets are going to really kind of take heed to a lot of the growth in what's happening in clean tech. And I'll give you one more example, kind of talking about some of the startups here and showing that even if you're a startup, there's a focus on internationalism. We have a company in the Accelerator called Amp Air, a company that's making hybrid electric airplanes. They deployed some of their technology in the Nordic countries. And the reason for that is because this type of technology is better suited for a short regional distance and really kind of suited for a lot of inter-island travel. So think of Hawaii, where they have a launch at, think of the Caribbean, but also think of the inter-island travel or the inter-country travel within the Nordic countries, which want to really kind of reduce the emissions from their Air Force. So I think with organizations like Techstars, us, and many others, Sharon mentioned France. There's a great organization called Station F that really helps French companies and also partners with American companies who want to launch in France. I think more of that is enabling startup companies and earlier companies to not have to wait until they're later in growth stage to really expand and get into the market. And I'll leave you with this also too, Michael. There are great funds out there like Tracy Gray, who leads the 22 Fund, that's exclusively focusing on exportation for companies who want to export their product. Because we got to remember, United States, we are historically have been really more of a country of importation, and a lot of small businesses, and which are the crux of what we do, we don't really think about exporting until we get to a certain size. But I think you can start thinking about that early, and export not only services but product.
So Stephen, let's stick geographically. Strategy-wise, we can talk about the whole business side. From where you sit as the president of the World Trade Center LA, and recently COO of LA Economic Development Corporation, geographically, where do you see the hot spots that people may not have seen before? I mean, we always say Vietnam is great because they're double-digit GDP and they privatize a whole bunch of stuff and they're doing great. A lot of people look at us like, wow, Kenya, Ethiopia, Vietnam, why not Germany and Japan? Do you think this year has uncovered or will uncover any geographic regions or countries?
You mean besides Los Angeles, right?
Of course.
Yeah, no, I think internationally we've been, I think given what Christine and Taj mentioned earlier, it depends on the industry that they're focused on, right? And there are definitely a lot of great opportunities internationally. And given there's a bit of a pent-up demand for various types of services and products. So if you're focused on bioscience, life sciences, there are different markets you can enter, and a lot of great technologies are necessary in order for us to move forward. Now that we're adjusting to this entire new economy in many ways, let's start with the fact that we're on a Zoom meeting, right? So as we're moving forward, real estate will completely change. How do you basically best utilize space? What are the technologies that are able to help companies calculate their expenditure when it comes to productivity and different things like that? So with those kind of applications, it can go global. For us, we've been tracking, as Taj and Christine both mentioned already, sustainability and clean tech is going to be the future for everybody, obviously. And I think everybody's looking at the United States, everybody's looking at China as a huge market. But sometimes they forget, for example, Nordic countries like Finland has been very, very aggressive and have moved forward with renewable energy solutions when it comes to, also when you're talking about renewable energy. Right now, we really have to look at the future of battery storage system, because that's part of the whole equation and solution. Where do we get lithium? Where do we get the cobalt? Where do we get the material? And basically, what are those processes, right? So then you're talking about other potential markets like Turkey. You're talking about Australia. So there are many, many places to look at for us, besides the usual kind of suspect for us in Los Angeles. We're very closely tied with Asia. So obviously Japan, China, Korea, Vietnam, as you talked about. But moving in the future, also, I think folks should look at other markets like Finland, like Armenia, and things that are not particularly on top of mind, but once they reach out to partners like Christine and myself and Taj, we can let you know, based on your particular focus, where are some of those key opportunities. And especially if they're based in Los Angeles, We are also home to the world's third largest consular corps, meaning about 105, 106 countries are represented here with their government officials and their representatives are located here. So you don't really have to travel around the world immediately. You can start getting some great contacts and information by being right here in Los Angeles to start that process.
Absolutely. I have to add to that, Michael. You know, I speak Spanish, Arabic, and English, and that's because of, you know, my father and my mother. But one of the things that I love about Los Angeles is that I can go around the corner and hear each of those languages and even more. And one of the things we used to talk about in expanding businesses was the lack of understanding foreign culture, the lack of understanding language. This is why diversity matters, because you can find people who may have a tie to some of those countries that you want to enter right here in Los Angeles because of the diversity of this nation and this city. And so I think that that's one of the things that I always talk about is that, again, you know, when there's a push for diversity, it's not just about race or gender. What it's about is economics and being able to have people who speak different languages, who have different experiences, who have different cultures and can help your company expand to those cultures where they have some relationships with.
Yeah, very true. Stephen, you want to enlighten us about Los Angeles culturally and anthropologically about you have all these great stats. I love them.
Yeah. Well, you know, LA is one of the most diverse regions in the entire world, right? With over 224 different languages spoken right here, over 140 nationalities represented. And I love what Taj said, right? You can see the folks that are here, and not only are they here, they're intermingling and really helping each other grow and innovate. And a really good example that I've used before, and I think this is a great example that people don't think about, is I asked folks internationally, it's like everybody knows about the food truck revolution a few years back, right? But where did it really start? And it actually started right here in Los Angeles when you have a Korean American person that was, you know, trained classically, but was really raised also within a Latino community. And basically based on his learning and based on his French cuisine learning, he didn't want to basically start a brick and mortar restaurant. What he did is he combined kind of the cuisine together and utilize what was then known as roachmobiles. And basically that was when Twitter was just coming around, using innovation, combining a food truck. The social media campaign of Twitter that just happened, like, you know, that 10 years ago, and then combining a Korean short rib in a taco, and all of a sudden started a cultural revolution that went worldwide. That when we talk about innovation, it's not just technological innovation, it's cultural innovation, it's gastronomic innovation. And where else can you do that but in LA? So the fact that that's a great example of the mixture of technology, innovation, culture, and, you know, global influence. And so there's so many things that can happen if folks are here in LA and able to take advantage of that. And that's what, you know, I think it's beautiful about our economy, right? It's so diverse and we enjoy it.
Yeah.
I need to add, we have to give love to the man you're talking about, Mr. Roy Choi. And the reason I'm saying that, and the reason I'm happy and I'm smiling is because we have his newest startup in our incubator. I'll put it in the chat. It's called Shoebox. And Shoebox is making some amazing things. So I am such a fan of what Roy has built and what he's about to build next. But you're absolutely right. The idea is more than just tech; it's culture that we are exporting as well.
Yeah, I think that diversity culturally provides us a great opportunity, because it's not just selling products or selling licenses or seats if you're a software company. Making the deals and the partnerships and the joint ventures, you know, we've seen a lot of our portfolio companies really thrive by joining with someone who's complementary from another country. And then all of a sudden there's offerings on both sides. It keeps the cost down. And, you know, I mean, Stephen just said there are more languages spoken here than there are recognized countries in the world, right? So that's those partnerships and deals are great. And that's what we're going to try to do with Global Lava, is try to connect those, particularly with the VCs that have portfolio companies. We want to introduce them to the high growth, innovative, complementary companies around the world so they can share resources and tap into the expertise. So it's smart money. And ultimately we're doing Christine's, her we're doing her a favor and Stephen as well by creating more jobs here and taxable revenue and all the other upsides. So speaking of the commercial and the transactional and the administrative, Christine, back to you. What do you think? I mean, we talked about strategies for geography. How about strategies within the company, within the administrative and internal perspective of what am I going to do with my company to be competitive overseas or cross-border?
Yeah, we've talked about sustainability already, and I think that is going to be key for every company, whether you're a clean tech company or a textile company, whether you identify as a green company or not. There is a necessity and a demand for companies to be environmental, socially conscious, have a social impact and a purpose, and to have good governance. And that doesn't stop when you go outside of these borders. In fact, I think it helps you because it gives you a competitive advantage in the global marketplace when you have all those ESG components lined up in terms of attracting investment. I mean, the Larry Fink's letter to the CEOs came out just yesterday, where he really is doubling down on ESG as being a driver for investment and climate change. And if your company isn't prepared for climate change impacts, then you're at risk. And so I think having an ESG strategy is more important.
Can you explain what ESG is or define it?
Yeah, it's environmental, social, and corporate governance. So it's everything from having a climate change or like a net zero carbon goals, having social impact goals, gender and racial equity, diversity, inclusion. So it's the whole umbrella. And as Taj was saying earlier, these things don't really line up into 3 distinct buckets. They really overlap and intersect. So it's really about having a purpose, having a plan, and positioning your company with that in mind. And I think that is makes you more competitive abroad as well.
Stephen, all the companies you work with, do you think there's going to be a new change for a better approach to building a global company?
Yeah, no, I'm going to kind of drill in a little bit in terms of the tactics as well. I think with the changes that I think with COVID-19 has made us kind of look inward a little bit more in terms of the approach. And I think what we've seen with the companies sometimes, especially during COVID-19, that they're not able to get there in person. And what we've seen is sometimes the approach are not microly focused. It's not as specific as it needs to be. And so they're trying to hit as many markets as possible. And when they're doing that, they're not as competitive because they just basically look like everybody else. So, right now, a lot of folks are offering cloud solution. And I'm sure a lot of folks, that are on the webinar have gotten a lot of emails basically saying, hey, I have the service for you, or you get a LinkedIn message and it's not personal. There's no ground game. So I think in order to be competitive, I think companies now need to really pay attention to not only the local market. Again, using LA as an example, you can't basically have the same approach as you would in Santa Monica versus what you would do in another region of Los Angeles, like the Pomona and the East LA, Eastern Los Angeles region, because the approach will be different. The folks that you're trying to reach is different. So same thing internationally. When you're going to Tokyo, when you're going to London, you really have to now start microly focusing on the regions that you're trying to approach. So I think it's changing the way that folks are analyzing the data. And that's why, I think prior to COVID-19, everybody's talking about big data. The data is now available. What are you going to do with that data? How are you going to analyze it? And how are you going to obtain the right type of data so you can make that decision? I think those are the things that companies, as they're moving forward, really need to look into.
Taj, what about your experience working with startups before the pandemic and seeing the underbelly of everything? I see 2021 as a really great stress test for us culturally and commercially. And the whole point of this is to see if anything is going to change fundamentally now, as far as running a startup, running a young high growth company with global aspirations. Have you seen any horror stories or anyone who's been very keen on getting through it?
Yeah. I've definitely seen some horror stories of again lack of relationship that's been built, company losing money, not this is pre-COVID, not taking into consideration that yes, this idea, if you're doing product, global shipping still has some issues there that can really kind of impact you. Not understanding the culture of the country. I've seen a lot of companies again go a little bit early. I think when I was a founder and what's happening now, I think what's good is that you have a lot of organizations like I had mentioned before in France and Techstars globally, Station Up, what have you, that startups can partner with. They can help them facilitate. And the opposite has happened here. At Lacey, we've taken in companies that have been based abroad, but they want to have a foothold in the United States, and they figure that Los Angeles is the best place to do so, especially if they're in our sector of transportation, energy, or circular economy. And they would have a U.S. subsidiary. They would be located here and either hire locally here or bring some of the individuals here. And particularly when I first started Lacey, we had a number of Korean companies that did that, especially on the energy side, the lithium battery side. And so I think that's been really interesting to see on that end for us. I think also too, what's happening though, that I've been seeing as an investor, I've been seeing a lot of different funds from, and Stephen mentioned it, from countries such as Greece and Finland and Macedonia and all these other places who are Estonia, really. Estonia has one of the coolest ID programs there. You can get citizenship, digital citizenship with Estonia, which is, I'm still waiting on mine to come in the mail. But there are these countries that are really coming in and providing capital and want to work with companies and saying, look, we will not only invest with you and give you the investment, we'll give you what's called platform services, which will help you launch a portion of your business in our country with this investment. So we're seeing more of that happening on the private sector with investments, especially in countries that are, again, a little bit off the radar. Even a country that I went to school at in Chile, a good friend of mine who went to Pepperdine, and I think we have some folks in Pepperdine in the audience, my alma mater, but he leads the equivalent to Lacey in Pepperdine, a fund that's public-private funded. And you would think in Chile, the emphasis would be on mining, which is a huge industry there. But there are some other areas that the country is looking at that he's looking for and trying to get companies from the United States to come here. I remember when I was in school in Pepperdine, and when I first went to Chile, it was right in the beginning of the free trade agreement between Chile and the United States. And at that time, agriculture was one of the big trades that we would see, and a lot of the movement going back and forth. Now you're seeing a lot more services that are moving back and forth between our country and their country as well, especially on the financial side and many other sides also.
Precisely. I lived and worked in Chile, and I've always still have a love for the country. They had a governmental program where they gave $50,000 for people to come in, right? And set up their operations there. Obviously, there was a vetting process. They didn't just hand out 50 grand, but they would start there, and then they would come here. Frustratingly, United States is wealthy enough, and we have enough opportunity here that money doesn't flow from the government into startups. But it really worked. And what else was I got another thought there, but I guess all the Chilean wine and empanadas out of it. So a little bit closer to home, Christine, you want to talk about the USMCA quickly? We're talking about Vietnam and 1.2 billion potential customers in Africa and all the opportunity there. But with this new agreement, can you talk a little bit about Chapter 25, which I think is really exciting and creative in the digital sharing, not just commerce, but the way I read it is we can actually come together and create new things to the three countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Well, the news cycle is so fast. We haven't even really addressed the elephant in the room of a new administration here. But I think that will have an impact on the opportunities for US companies. I think there's still going to be a focus on North America and on regional competitiveness. You know, the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, the update to NAFTA that was well overdue, was a bipartisan agreed trade agreement. It didn't start out as that way, but after there were tweaks made by Democrats in Congress, especially to the labor and environment provisions, it was a bipartisan effort. So I do expect USMCA and a focus on North America to continue. I think there could be a little bit of a thawing between US and China because we do have shared interests around climate change. You know, China recently came out with its goal to peak its greenhouse gas emissions and reach net zero by 2050. So I expect there will be a thawing between US, China, the United States and China, and then also a real warming up between the United States and Europe. You know, under the Trump administration, you know, there's no secret that he was not a fan of the EU. This administration is, I think, very bullish on Europe, and we're going to see a lot more room for cooperation with the European Union and its member states, including France. And so I think there's that this administration change is going to open up a lot of goodwill and opportunities.
Yeah, that elephant in the room that you mentioned is the whole reason everybody's happy and smiling on this on this panel, I believe, and the whole reason we're having it, because it, yeah, it really could be a whole new world. So it's 12 of. Let's move to some questions. I'll go through some simple ones in case, you know, as not to get bogged down in the more profound ones. This one's for you, Stephen. Softball. I work for LA Camping Brand. I'm looking for a local factory to manufacture some of my products. Do you know of a database, or maybe somebody who has a database of manufacturers?
Yeah, those are always tough questions, right? Because to find the right manufacturer that can actually take you on as a client to produce for you, you know, depending on the specification. But generally speaking, Dun & Bradstreet, you can purchase the data there. You can basically buy a list of all the manufacturers and basically put in the criteria to get more information. But Dun & Bradstreet data is not exactly the cheapest. What can happen is if you send us an email, what we can do is provide you with at least some guidance and the information that we have within our list that we can share with you. And from there on, you might be able to get some additional details. But when it comes to manufacturing, it depends on, one, the quantity that you're trying to manufacture, what specification, and, you know, it depends on the product. So unfortunately, there's not an easy answer. There's a depends answer. But the good part is, if you reach out to us, we can walk you through that process.
Right, so that was one of the free services and resources that I mentioned at the top of the panel. It's free of cost, right, for that work that you do, Stephen? Okay, Christine, how about Orange County founders? Can you help them?
Oh yeah, we love Orange County. Actually, for this virtual trade mission to Kenya, we're taking a regional approach. So we are open to having companies participate from any of the 5 counties. We're partnering with Long Beach because Long Beach has a sister city relationship with Mombasa. So, you know, LA, we like our neighbors, we like to work together. So yeah, please reach out.
Same goes to you, Stephen?
Yeah, and Christine brings up a very good point. It's that I think, historically speaking, sometimes the regions don't always work as well together. I think as the last 2 decades or so, I think many people realize that one, internationally, people don't know the difference between Orange County and Los Angeles. And, you know, a lot of our international partners, they don't know San Bernardino is different, you know, so for them, LA is just this entire big area. And for us, you know, sometimes we put this, you know, kind of these geographic boundary because, you know, Burbank is Burbank. Don't you call Burbank Glendale, you know, but for folks, it's just, it's all LA. So that's why you're seeing more of a collaborative effort, because we know that together we're able to compete a lot better. And there are a lot of other states that are very eager to poach from us. And so what we need to do is unite our resources and be able to help each other out and help our companies out. So yeah, Christine's absolutely right. We want to work very closely with our neighbor, and we will.
Yeah, let me add, Michael, I am literally right now sitting in Western Riverside County. I split my time between LA County and Riverside County. And you know, like you mentioned, I used to be the Accelerator director in UC Riverside. And my argument used to be, when you're thinking about Southern California, just like Stephen says, even in Silicon Valley, no one really knew the difference between Riverside and San Bernardino. So for me, it's about the growth of all of Southern California, because I think that you're going to start seeing a lot of that too. And I think from a standpoint of the startup sector, you know, in Orange County, I'm loving what Cal State Fullerton is doing with their startup community. I have some good friends that are doing some really great stuff there. And then definitely my friends in Orange County at the Cove, doing some really great work there with startup companies and really bringing funding to that region as well.
Taj, sticking with you, two questions for you. What countries do you think would be better for telehealth?
Yeah, good question. I saw it in the chat and I got kind of excited. We have a company, even though we're a Cleantech company, we have a company that shifted during COVID called Shared Harvest Fund, that was staffed by a bunch of ER doctors, and they ended up shifting to become My COVID MD, and then they're shifting yet again to be in telehealth. And they're taking two different strategies, which I really am loving. They're taking one strategy of expanding to Costa Rica. One of the reasons they're expanding to Costa Rica is to gain the highly educated population there in Costa Rica on the medical side, and the language of Spanish, which for them, they can have the telehealth exposure not only in Latin America and South America, but also in the United States, because of the large amount of the population here that speaks Spanish as well. So that's one of the things we've been seeing a lot with our own companies kind of expanding there. Another country that I like, that I've been seeing a lot more collaboration with, is Israel. Israel has been doing a lot of stuff that I've been seeing a lot more on the like drones and a lot of that stuff on sustainability, but also telehealth has been coming out of that as well. I suspect you're going to see a lot more innovation coming from the UCs too. With one of the things that I loved before I left University of California, Riverside, is because they built the medical school, and it was one of the first medical schools built in California in, I think, almost 50 years. The reason why that's important is because now you have a new age of doctors who are coming up in the age of innovation. And so they're not afraid to also be entrepreneurs or think about really innovative policies, even the aspect of telehealth, as they're doing it on their own. So this company that's in Lacey, Shared Harvest Fund, My COVID MD, they're a perfect example of a new age emergency doctors that are also hybrid entrepreneurs. So yeah, to answer the question, Costa Rica, really good country I'm seeing, and Israel.
Right. And don't miss our Israel panel coming up in February, I believe. Sikdar, you're asking about funds. Maybe Taj can answer that offline.
Yeah, I put them in the chat too, Mike.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. So here's one of the profound, deep questions I alluded to earlier. So taxes and homelessness and businesses closing and leaving for places like Texas. I won't say anything bad about Texas, Taj, but you know they are.
I'm not there. I'm still here in California. There's a reason for that.
They're trying to undermine us. You know, how do you expect startups to maintain and survive and remain here in California, and you know be able to provide decent pay? My 2 cents on that is a stat we always say to people who need the education and the oomph to get over the reluctance of trying to do something international. And then 75 to 80% of global purchasing power is abroad. And only 1% of US companies export. And if they do, it's usually to Canada or Mexico. So if you want to triple your sales and your potential success, go to the global markets. But Christine, do you want to address that? How can they stay here?
You know, I think this perception of companies fleeing California is overblown. There was an article out recently looking at LinkedIn data showing that, in fact, people are not all moving to Austin. They're moving to Sacramento. So they're moving within the state. I do think it's overblown. I go back and forth trying to figure out, and I'm sure everyone else does too, trying to figure out what's a blip and what's here to stay because of COVID. And I think ultimately it comes down to, like, what do we want? Like, what do we want to stay? What do we want to change? And we have to take those steps to make that happen. So, taxes, I know the governor has just recently, in his most recent budget, increased the funding for Cal Competes, which is a income tax credit for companies that are looking to come to California or to stay and grow in California. And that's open to companies of all sizes, big and small. And the award is based on your investment and how many jobs you're making. So I think there's opportunities to be had and a lot of resources out there. And I'm happy to, try and help connect people to those resources. But we also, need to know what everyone's needs are. So if some needs aren't being met, please let us know about that too.
And if I can,
oh, go ahead, Stephen.
Stephen, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and add, Christine's right. In terms of sometimes the focus, the media focus is on these numbers, and obviously, I don't want to mitigate that. When Toyota left us, thousands of jobs left this entire region. That's real. The homeless issue, it's real. We have one of the largest homeless population in the United States, and because of COVID, it is going to grow. But this is also an issue that's growing nationally. So these are all real issues that I don't want to mitigate in any ways. However, when it comes to the business decision, as Christine was mentioning, the honest truth is this: Los Angeles and California may not be right for every company. And same is true for Austin, same is true for Missoula. It basically depends on your company and your company's need. What we said before is that this is a market. If you want to access 18.7 million consumers in one region, access to the entire world with some of the best transportation logistics access in the world, with the #1 container port, #2 container port, #3 busiest airport in the world, with some of the best education institutions, including the #1 research university with Caltech, the top public university with UCLA, one of the top 25 with USC, with 118 higher education institutions, with a supply chain and with all the industries that are so varied that you're not basically dependent on either the energy sector or the financial sector. That's why our economy is so healthy and so robust, is because of all these different assets. Yes, is it expensive? Part of the reason is because when you have access, and this is right before COVID-19, when you have access to Beyonce, to the Dodgers game, to Katy Perry, to some of the best entertainment in the world on your fingertips, and the best food around the world located right here, and some of just easy access to world destinations, so you don't have to transfer 6 times in order to get to your hometown. Like there's a price to that. And yet, at the same time, we have to balance the two. So there are a lot of folks in a lot of the business community that are working together to change legislation to make sure that our local and state elected officials are reflecting those changes, so that we're not overtaxing. And that's why, going back to Christine's point, this democracy, it's messy now with the new administration. It gives us an opportunity to kind of push and pull a little bit to change this policy. So for those who are concerned about those tax policies, I really encourage you to be part of this participatory democracy and change those regulations so that we can have better California and better Los Angeles.
Taj, we're right at 6 o'clock. Do you have any summation of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to echo what they said, but give you this example. There's always these stories about companies leaving. I'm gonna give you a story about a company coming. We recruited a company that was established in Buffalo called Spark Charge. If you watch the show Shark Tank, you may have seen it because they got $1 million from Mark Cuban, a company that's focused on the EV infrastructure. So there's not all gloom and doom of companies leaving the state. There are companies coming here, loving our sunshine, loving our innovation, and loving the diversity that we have here. And that's what I love about California, and that's why I'm here as opposed to being in Texas, where I was born. So it says something a lot.
And I should say to the viewers and the attendees locally, these companies that Taj talks about coming in from Buffalo and talking about Finland and these other markets, they're coming here. That's an opportunity. It's not necessarily competition, right? To partner with these guys. We're all about joint venture deals and partnering and making a better product, service, or solution. So I realized that in the beginning, talking about humility of all the panelists, I forgot to introduce myself. So I run the International Business Accelerator. We're the first one in the US to have a focus on cross-border growth and international expansion. So what we do proudly is we work with companies and introduce them to all-stars like Christine and Stephen and the free services that they offer as sort of part of the concierge part of what we do. And then we also tap in, we're structured as a nonprofit, so we don't take equity. So we can then take our greatest and introduce them to Taj. And he can put them in an accelerator where they do get a check, or he being a VC himself, he could fund them, or he knows other people that may want to fund. So the idea of Los Angeles is great because we're so collaborative, and you see that tonight with all the services that are offered. So so I introduced myself. The other thing I forgot to say is my mom's watching us. Sorry, I didn't get my hair cut and my barber got coronavirus. So I checked that off my notes. So it's a little after 6. I really want to thank Taj and Stephen and Christine. I think this embodied the positive ambition that we've all been keeping under bated breath for the last 4 years or so. The opportunities are fantastic, and Los Angeles is the greatest place to be. So thank you, everyone. All the contact information is in the chat. And if anybody has any other questions or wants to communicate with the panelists, I put my information there too, Michael McClune. So thank you, Sharon, for putting this together, and Darren.
Great, Michael. Thank you so much. Oops, I've got the other one going here too. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Taj, considering you a friend these days, Christine, I'm looking forward to working with you more. The Vietnam experience was fantastic. Stephen, we haven't really had a chance to connect yet, but you jumped in, and I was ready to jump in, and you just said everything I wanted to say there in response to that question. So thank you for jumping in. We hear all these things, and thanks, Taj, for getting us an example of the folks that are coming here. One thing I will want to reiterate, we have been adding communities to LAVA, and one of the new communities in LAVA is called LAVA Gov. A testament to the things that Stephen was saying is how many new communities we've added. We've added Food Tech LAVA, which is partnering with Food Tech LA. We now have Space LAVA. We've got too many associations that are affiliated with LAVA Space is what we've called that one. We've got Lava Media, Lava Gaming, Canna Lava, Women in Lava. This is Global Lava, obviously. We have a ton of lavas these days. But I really encourage you to get involved, particularly with Lava Gov, if you have concerns with regard to that question that was asked and all the issues that were mentioned in that question. Lava Gov will be focusing on both legislative issues, regulatory and local permitting type issues, and then GovTech, of course. So we may actually be having an event coming up soon. Tomorrow's event on Africa is related to Lava Gov. They are co-sponsors of the event tomorrow.
And that one's in the morning. I just wanted to remind everyone it's in
yes, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So bright and early to accommodate the international nature of the panelists, in fact. I think you all saw the post. I've asked everyone to join Lava. Again, I want to reiterate, thank all the panelists tonight. Thank you so much, Taj, Stephen, Christine, Michael and Sharon, for all the hard work that you guys do. Thank you guys in the audience. We had a fantastic audience, and most of the folks have stuck around even past the 6 o'clock time. So great job with sticking it out, and we appreciate it. I think without further ado, I'll end the show, and thank you again. We'll go out to Who's Yelling Now, because that's just my new favorite song, I have to say. I can't get over that one. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.